Hey guys, my name is Cassidy and you're watching That Spooky Lifestyle, where we bring the ooky, the spooky, the creepy and the crawly into our everyday lives. Today is part 2 of the Bloody Mary collection. Before we get started, I just want you guys to know that this is a 3-part series. If you haven't seen my first part, go check it out. As well as there will be a lot of spookiness in these videos. If that's not your thing, click away now. It's the only warning you're gonna get. Today I'm going to be continuing my makeup from the last video and talking about more suspected origins of Bloody Mary. So let's just get right into it. So another possible origin story of Bloody Mary is Mary Worth, and apparently she is suspected of being a witch during the Civil War. It's said that she would lock up slaves in her barn. Now, if you watched my previous Bloody Mary video, this story would sound suspiciously similar to one we already talked about. Anyways, Mary Worth would kidnap these slaves, keep them in her barn, and perform her dark magic on them. Eventually, this outraged locals, and they took revenge into their own hands. Having a witch around in those days, they were just not having it. So not shockingly, the locals ended up actually burning Mary Worth at the stake on her own farm. So many years after Mary Worth was executed, a different couple bought her land because they're farmers. It was a good plot of land, and you know, her burning at the stake happened many years ago, so they honestly probably didn't even know about it when they bought the land. Oh, sorry, my notes say that they did know about Mary Worth's execution, but again, it was so long ago that they were probably just like, whatever. So they actually built their house on top of the section of land that was the barn where Mary used to perform her dark arts. Now, you know, I'm not saying that's like the best decision they've ever made, but if you didn't believe in it, or you know, you just didn't care, you would just be like, whatever, this is a great spot to build a house. Maybe it was like the only sturdy plot of land or flat land. You don't really know. I don't know what the property looks like. Maybe they didn't really have a choice and that's where they had to build. We don't know the details, okay? It says apparently, not to be scared by old legends, the farmer set out to clear the land so that he could plant oats. So during this, while he was kind of clearing the land, he came across this big stone, and it was just kind of in the way, and he was like, you know what, this would actually make a great doorstop. So he moved the stone, brought it back to his house, and used it kind of as like a doorstop to keep the door open, let the fresh air in. You know, it was just like it was a good sized stone for that. However, immediately after moving the stone, like a bunch of weird-ish started happening around the home. Like the wife got locked in the barn on numerous occasions, or like plates would just break, they would fall on the floor supposedly by themselves and just shatter. Just like weird stuff like that, and like all right after each other. It's one thing if like kind of weird-ish, you know, happens, and then like 6 months later another weird thing happens. It's kind of like, okay, well, when they're all like right in a row kind of around each other, it's a lot easier to notice and be like, okay, what's going on here? So the activity continued to worsen and worsen, and then obviously the farmer started kind of second guessing himself and the stories that he's heard about where he lives, and he thought, oh shiznit, when I moved that stone, did I disrupt Mary's grave, or like, is that where she was burned? Like, I don't fucking know. So he's kind of freaking out a little bit. So he actually tried to do the right thing and go and put the stone back where he found it, but it's like a farmland, like it's huge, and he couldn't actually remember where he got it from, unfortunately for him and his family. He moved it a couple of different times and honestly just could not figure out where this stupid thing went. So as you can imagine, the kind of poltergeist activity, you could say, did not get any better. After several years of torment, in 1986, the house actually burned down to the ground. Like, that family moved out, moved away, whatever. So after a couple more years, people kept trying to build on their property, but for, you know, a bunch of different reasons, these houses kept not being built, or there kept being issues with them. Finally, someone managed to build some houses on this land, but it said that the one closest to Mary's barn actually burned down. Ooh. So this is another kind of legend that ties into Bloody Mary. Again though, there's no real connection with mirrors or even cuts or blood. Basically, it's just a witch story that, you know, she was wronged and now she's kind of getting her revenge with her dark. Probably one of the most popular Bloody Mary stories, which is Queen Mary of England, not Mary Queen of Scots. Poor girl, she's just getting a bad rep because people are stupid. So Queen Mary I, also known as Mary Tudor, was Queen of England and Ireland from 1518 to 1558. Her determination to reverse the English Reformation is what gave her the literal nickname Bloody Mary. Apparently during her reign, she executed over 280 Protestants, and these actually were named the Marian persecutions because she was just so adamant about them. And the way these people were executed is they were actually all burned at the stake, which, you know, honestly, burning people at the stake was just like a thing in Europe for a while. Like, that's just what you did. So there's also a bunch of like weird-ish that happened with Queen Mary. Like, she always wanted kids but couldn't have them, and then she did get pregnant or show all the signs of getting pregnant. Like, her boobs got bigger, her tummy got bigger, but she never actually had a baby. By the time the baby should have came out, she started to revert back to looking normal, not like pregnant. Rumors started circulating that it was like a ghost baby and all this stuff. However, Queen Mary was also succeeded by her half-sister or stepsister, and her stepsister was a Protestant. So some people say that Queen Mary's reign was like embellished, made to look more evil than it was because her successor was a Protestant. But it's like, you also killed 280 people, so people argue that at the time, burning people at the stake was very standard in Europe. Like I said, that was actually just standard procedure to burn people at the stake, which sounds messed up, but it's facts, girl. It's facts. I think it was the fact that she just burned so many is kind of what gave her this reputation. But yes, she is one of the main people that gets suspected for the origins of the Bloody Mary myth. Especially when we talk about different ways to summon Bloody Mary, you'll see why that kind of ghost baby comes into play here. So I'm not gonna say too much on how she's connected to Bloody Mary just yet, because we'll be getting into that in part 3 of the series. Now we're going to be talking about Bloody Mary of Michigan, and this is kind of like a regional spin on the Bloody Mary legend, so let's just dive right in, shall we? A long time ago, there was a little girl named Mary, and she got in some sort of an accident that put her into a deep coma, and at the time, people thought she was dead. So unfortunately, they buried her alive, which, you know, back in the day was actually not super uncommon thing to do because people just did not understand, you know, how humans' bodies worked. So every night, Mary's mother would go to the grave because obviously she lost her daughter, she was very sad, and she told people that she could hear Mary screaming. She told everyone that she could hear her daughter was alive, she could hear her. No one believed her. They were just like, you know, you're in mourning, like, relax, it's not your daughter, we buried her. Finally, one day, she convinced the townspeople to dig Mary back up, and when they did and they opened her casket, there was nail marks and scratching on the inside of the coffin. She had blood all over her hands because she'd been trying to get out. It was a very gruesome and sad sight to see. Along with this tale is a number of different things will happen if you say Bloody Mary in the mirror. You might see her walking down the stairs with a knife, and if you do, you have to turn on the lights or she'll kill you. But there's another version where if you see Bloody Mary walking down the stairs and she's holding a teddy bear, then she won't kill you. And in this version, Mary's grave is actually in Jackson in a cemetery, but you have to apparently walk through a bunch of trails and stuff to get there because it's a really old cemetery from long ago. And her grave was actually eventually removed because, you know, the ground shifts and it was starting to bring the graves up, and so a lot of them were removed just so that there wasn't like a bunch of old coffins and dead bodies hanging around. because that's not fun for anyone. But yeah, I thought that tale on Bloody Mary was kind of interesting, a little bit of like almost a hometown legend, if you will. And then another origin of Bloody Mary, which I thought was super interesting, is from a folklorist named Alan Dunes. And he suggests that Bloody Mary is actually a physical representation of when girls transition into womanhood, because there's a lot of like symbolism with being in a dark bathroom by yourself and having like kind of blood appear out of nowhere. You know, it's supposed to be kind of a symbolism for when you first get your period, because it is, you know, kind of scary. It's like blood kind of shows up out of nowhere, you're not sure what to do. Like, that's his take on it, and I just thought that that was a really interesting like way to think about that. Once you've had your period obviously for a few years, it's nothing scary. You're just like, oh fuck, this bitch is here again, you know? And so to think that someone created this like insane monster out of it is just like interesting. Those are all the stories that I'm going to be sharing with you today. I hope you enjoyed them. In the next video, I will be talking about all the ways you can summon Bloody Mary and the consequences for doing so. Let's take a quick sneak peek. One person is supposed to go into the bathroom alone and close the door with all the lights off, just the candles and the incense, and you're supposed to chant this kind of prayer or spell of protection before you start. As for that, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the last installment of the Bloody Mary collection, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at thatspookylifestyle. I'll see you in my next video.